They just wanted a fresh start. That is all she ever asked for. A roof that did not leak, a door that locked, and floors that did not remind her of the man who walked away. But what she found buried inside that old house, it was never part of the plan, and it would change everything. If stories of real courage and second chances move your heart, subscribe right now. Because this one, you will not believe what happens next. She was tired of running. After the divorce, Angela packed everything she had into a borrowed truck, 3 suitcases, 2 kids, and a dusty photo album with torn corners. The drive to upstate New York was long, filled with quiet tears and fake smiles for her children, who were too young to understand why Daddy was not coming. Her voice cracked every time she said, "We are going to make this house our home." But she said it anyway, again and again, until she started to believe it. The house was a wreck. Built in 1912, it had been abandoned for years, its walls crumbling and paint peeling like old scabs. The price was low enough for her broken savings, but every step on those creaky floorboards whispered mistake. Yet Angela smiled, even when the wind blew straight through the shattered window panes. Her sons, Lucas and Theo, followed her like shadows, dragging paint buckets and sweeping dust with brooms too big for their hands. They were just kids, but somehow, in their little hearts, they knew Mom needed them now more than ever. Angela started with the kitchen. Stripping wallpaper, she uncovered a layer of green floral print from the 70s. Under that, another layer, faded blue. She laughed for the first time in weeks. "This house has history," she told the boys. "So do we. And we are going to make new memories here." By the second week, things started to shift. The heater worked, sort of. The kids' laughter echoed off newly painted walls. Hope came back. Not all at once, but slowly, like sunlight creeping through morning blinds. And then, it happened. Angela was working on the attic. She had avoided it for days. The door was stuck, swollen shut from years of damp air. But that evening, as rain tapped the roof and the kids played with the toolbox downstairs, she gave it a hard shove. And what she saw when that door finally opened, she could not speak. Inside the attic, the air was heavy, thick with the smell of rotting wood and forgotten time. Angela stepped slowly, her boots crunching over old insulation and scattered debris. A broken lamp, a child's shoe, an overturned crate. And then, tucked behind an old trunk wrapped in cobwebs, she saw something strange. A leather-bound journal. It was small, covered in dust, its corners eaten by time. She hesitated. For a moment, she thought about leaving it there. But curiosity whispered louder than fear. She picked it up and opened the cover with trembling fingers. The first page was dated March 1943. The handwriting was beautiful, cursive, neat. A woman's voice filled the page. "To whoever finds this, I hope you believe me. Because what happened in this house was never supposed to be found." Angela's heart skipped. Her hands gripped the book tighter. The words were not just old, they were emotional, raw, almost too real. She turned the page, her eyes scanning fast now. "My husband bought this house in the war. Said it would be our safe place. But he was never the same after the army. He hid things. He whispered to walls. He buried secrets. I am writing this because I hear them too now, under the floors." Angela stepped back, instinctively looking down at her feet. The floorboards beneath her creaked. Her breath caught. She called the boys. "Lucas, Theo, come up here," slowly. They rushed up, eyes wide. She showed them the journal, but left out the creepier parts. Just said they had found something interesting. They were too young to read it all, but Lucas, the older one, pointed at the trunk near where the journal had been. "Mom, what if there's something inside there too?" Angela hesitated, then nodded. They walked over. The trunk was old, metal-lined, and locked tight with a rusted clasp. But it was not sealed. The moment she touched it, it gave a soft click and opened. What they found inside sent a chill straight through her spine. Inside the trunk, neatly arranged as if untouched by time, were old photographs, ration cards, yellowed letters tied with red string, and beneath them, something far more unsettling. A small wooden box with a brass plate that read, "To be opened only by blood." Angela froze. The boys looked up at her, confused. "What does that mean, Mom?" Theo asked, his little fingers already reaching for it. She stopped him gently. Her heart pounded harder now. The phrase felt heavy, like it meant more than it said. She picked up the box carefully and placed it on the attic floor. Its lock had no keyhole, just a shallow indentation that looked oddly shaped, almost like a fingerprint. Lucas knelt beside her. "Try your thumb," he whispered. Angela chuckled nervously, brushing it off. It's just old superstition. But the curiosity burned inside her like wildfire. So, with the boys watching, she pressed her thumb into the indentation. Click. The lid opened. Inside was a folded piece of parchment paper and a small velvet pouch. She opened the paper first. Her eyes moved slowly as the words unraveled before her. This house carries a debt, one that was never paid. If you are kin, you must choose, bury it deeper, or uncover the truth. Her throat dried. Kin, she whispered. She opened the pouch. Inside was an antique locket, but it was what was inside the locket that turned her world upside down. A black and white photo, faded but visible. A woman who looked exactly like her. Exactly. Same eyes, same cheekbones, same tired expression, like she had seen too much of life too soon. Angela's hands shook. Her mind raced. She looked again at the journal, then the trunk, then back to the photo. Could it be? Was this woman her ancestor? Why was she never told? And why would someone hide all this in a locked attic, buried under boxes, wrapped in silence? Downstairs, the lights flickered. Thunder cracked outside. The wind began to howl as if the house itself had heard her thoughts. Lucas clung to her arm. Mom, is everything okay? Angela did not answer. Because deep inside, she knew this house did not just come to her by accident. It had been waiting. Angela barely slept that night. Every creak of the house felt louder. Every shadow stretched longer. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, clutching the locket in one hand and the journal in the other. Her mind refused to rest. At sunrise, she went back to the attic alone. She had to know more. She read through the journal slowly now, page by page. The woman's name was Eleanor Whitmore. And the deeper Angela read, the more familiar Eleanor felt, not just in looks, but in pain. The entries spoke of betrayal, loss, and a child she was forced to give up in secret. The father had been powerful, connected, someone who wanted the child erased from the family's record. Angela's fingers trembled over the lines. I had no choice. I left him at the steps of a church in Albany. But I never stopped watching. I never stopped loving him. If this journal ever finds its way to him or his children, please forgive me. She gasped. Albany. That was where her grandmother was raised. Her mother had always told her their roots were from somewhere out east, but never said more. Could it be? Was she Eleanor's granddaughter? Was this house not just some random fixer-upper, but a lost thread pulling her back to the truth? She needed answers. Real ones. So she took the journal and the locket to the local records office in town, a dusty place filled with filing cabinets and forgotten history. She showed them to a clerk named Mr. Harris, an elderly man with thick glasses and a passion for puzzles. He squinted at the locket, then opened an old archive drawer. Eleanor Whitmore, he muttered, flipping through papers. Yes, here she is. Moved here in 1942. Husband died in the war. Filed a property deed on the exact address of your home. Angela leaned in. Did she have children? He paused. One. Born out of wedlock. Male. No name listed. The adoption was sealed. Church-based. But he pulled another file, scanned it, then looked at her. Miss, are you sure you are not part of this family tree? Angela felt lightheaded. She was not just renovating a house. She was walking back into her own bloodline, into a past that had been hidden intentionally. And if Eleanor's words were true, there was still more beneath this house. Literally. Because the journal ended with one haunting line, forgive me. I had to bury it under the nursery floor. Angela drove home in silence. The journal sat beside her like a heartbeat she could not ignore. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, but her mind was somewhere beneath the nursery floorboards, haunted by Eleanor's final words. I had to bury it under the nursery floor. She parked the car, stepped out slowly, and walked straight into the house. The kids were at the neighbors, thankfully. She needed to be alone for this. The nursery had once been a soft yellow guest room, now stripped bare. Paint buckets sat in one corner. The wooden floor, though old, looked solid. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. Angela dropped to her knees and began knocking gently across each board, listening for a hollow sound. And then she found it. One plank echoed slightly different. Her breath caught. With a flathead screwdriver and a quiet prayer, she pried it open. The wood gave way with a groan. Beneath it was a small metal tin, covered in a velvet cloth, fragile with age. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding in her throat. She lifted the tin and opened it slowly. Inside were two things. First, a worn letter sealed with wax. Second, a delicate gold bracelet engraved with a name, Samuel Whitmore. She opened the letter with care. The ink had faded, but the message was clear. If you were reading this, it means the truth found its way home. Samuel was my son. I could not keep him, but I loved him every day of my life. This bracelet was his, for his child someday. Please, let them know who they are. Tears welled up in Angela's eyes. She clutched the bracelet to her chest and fell back against the wall, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. This was not just about renovation. This was restoration. The story of a broken woman, just like her, who had fought to protect what little she had. And now, decades later, that buried truth had chosen to rise. Through her children. But just as she was about to close the floorboard again, she noticed something else. Another paper, stuck beneath the corner of the velvet cloth. She pulled it free. It was not a letter. It was a will. Eleanor Whitmore's last will and testament. And it was unsigned, except for one curious line at the bottom. To my true blood, this house is yours. Prove you are mine. Angela blinked in disbelief. Wait, was this house legally hers by inheritance? But how could she prove it? And more importantly, who might not want her to? Angela stared at the will, her hands trembling. The words blurred, not from age, but from the storm of emotions crashing inside her. Prove you are mine. It was not just a message. It was a challenge, a door, a key, and she needed to find the lock. She scanned the attic again later that evening, desperate for another clue. The journal, the locket, the bracelet, and now the will, each piece told a part of the story, but not the whole truth. Something was still missing. So she did something she had never done before. She called her estranged mother. It had been over 2 years since they had spoken, since the divorce, since the screaming matches over her bad decisions, since her mother had said, "You always make things harder than they need to be." But now, Angela needed answers, not judgment. The phone rang and rang. Then her mother's voice came through, cold but curious. Angela. Angela took a shaky breath. Did Grandma ever mention a woman named Eleanor Whitmore? Silence. Then a pause so heavy it felt like the air changed. Where did you hear that name? Angela hesitated. I found something. In the house. A journal, a will, a name, Samuel Whitmore. Her mother whispered, almost like a ghost speaking through the line, that name was never meant to survive. My mother used to say it was a curse, said her real father wasn't who she was told. There were secrets. She burned every letter connected to him. Angela sat down hard. So, he was real? I do not know everything, her mother replied. But your grandmother always feared someone would come asking one day. Said if they did, the house would answer them. Angela felt a chill crawl up her spine. Because that is exactly what had happened. I think I am Eleanor's granddaughter, she said quietly. And this house was always mine. Another pause. Then a sigh. Be careful, Angela. Some truths cost more than they give. Angela hung up without saying goodbye. She had no time for warnings. She had come too far to turn back. But she did not know she was not the only one who had found the will. Because downstairs, Theo had opened the front door for a visitor. A man in a dark gray suit stood outside, holding an envelope, wearing a forced smile. Is your mother home? He asked politely. Theo nodded and ran upstairs. Angela met the man at the door, cautious. Can I help you? He handed her the envelope. Just a formal notice, he said, regarding the title of this property. There seems to be some confusion. Her blood turned cold. She opened the letter. It was from a local law firm. Someone was filing a claim to take the house. Someone who said they were the last known heir of Eleanor Whitmore. And their name? Preston Whitmore. Angela had never heard of him, but he knew who she was. And he was already coming for everything. Angela's hands clenched the letter so tightly it crinkled at the edges. Her jaw tightened as she scanned every word, legal phrases, case numbers, official stamps. But the meaning was clear. Someone was trying to steal the house from under her. And the worst part? He carried the Whitmore name. Preston Whitmore. A name that had never once appeared in Eleanor's journal. Not in the letters. Not in the will. Not in the attic. He came out of nowhere, but clearly, he had been watching. Waiting. And now, the moment she uncovered the truth, he made his move. Angela shut the door without another word to the man in the suit. Her mind raced. If Preston was related, why would he try to take the house by force? And if he was not, why lie? Downstairs, Lucas and Theo were watching her closely. She forced a smile, but they saw through it. "Mom," Lucas asked softly, "what did that man want?" Angela knelt beside him. "He thinks this house belongs to him. But it doesn't, and we are going to prove it." She stayed up all night searching. Old town records, ancestry databases, anything that could connect her to Eleanor more clearly. She needed legal proof, a birth certificate, a missing link. But every file was either sealed or missing. Frustrated, she dug deeper into the attic trunk, hoping she had missed something. And that is when she saw it. Taped underneath the bottom of the trunk, hidden by a false panel, was one final envelope. Yellowed with age, sealed with red wax, just like the others. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a baptismal certificate. Samuel Whitmore, born 1943. Mother, Eleanor Whitmore. Adopted in Albany. Adoptive family name, Carver. Angela gasped. Carver. That was her mother's maiden name. Her great-grandparents were Samuel's adoptive parents. The truth clicked into place. She was not just connected to Eleanor. She was Samuel's granddaughter, the rightful heir. Angela stared at the document, her heart pounding with both relief and rage. Preston had no claim, no blood, no history, just a name he had latched onto for power, for greed. But she had the story, the pain, the bloodline. Still, something felt off. Why would Preston risk legal fraud if he knew she could prove the truth? Unless he had help. Angela's phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Drop the claim. You don't know what you're digging up. Her heart dropped. It was not just about inheritance anymore. This house held more than memories. It held secrets someone was still trying to bury. Angela stared at the message, the glow of her phone lighting up the fear in her eyes. Drop the claim. You don't know what you're digging up. It was not a warning, it was a threat. But she was not the same woman who had cried herself to sleep after the divorce. She had rebuilt walls, painted over wounds, and turned silence into strength. Whoever Preston Whitmore was, he underestimated her. She took a breath, locked her phone, and turned to the window. The house creaked gently under the weight of wind. The floor whispered beneath her feet as she made her way back to the attic, not to hide, but to confront what was left. She stood in the middle of the room and looked around. Something still felt unfinished. She pulled open Eleanor's journal once more, flipping toward the end. Most of it she had already read, but just as she was about to close it, a single page caught her eye, glued to the back cover. Faint outlines showed it had once been sealed shut. She peeled it carefully and unfolded the final secret. It was not written in full sentences. It was a map, a hand-drawn layout of the house, the attic, the nursery, and beneath them a hidden room, labeled only as root cellar, sealed 1952. Angela had never seen a root cellar. She ran to the basement, heart pounding. The air grew colder with every step. She searched the walls, tapping, knocking, searching for a seam, a hollow. And then, behind an old shelf stacked with paint cans and broken tools, she found it. A wooden panel, warped with age. She pried it open. Behind it was a narrow stone staircase, completely hidden from view. The air was thick and still, like no one had stepped inside in decades. She grabbed a flashlight, took a deep breath, and descended. At the bottom, the cellar opened into a small room. Stone walls, damp earth, and in the middle, a rusted metal box resting on a pedestal of bricks. No dust, no cobwebs, almost like it had been checked recently. Angela's breath caught. She crouched beside it, opened the box, and inside stacks of letters. Faded deeds, ledgers, financial documents. But one paper sat at the very top. Crisp, newer than the rest. A transfer of ownership. Signed, Preston Whitmore. Co-signed by Mayor Evelyn Royce. Angela's jaw dropped. The mayor? This went deeper than family greed. This was a cover-up, going back generations. Land, property, power. And she had walked right into it. Suddenly, footsteps echoed above her. Heavy, purposeful. Then a voice. Male. Cold. You should not have come down here. Angela froze. She was not alone anymore. Angela's heart thundered in her chest. The voice was close, too close. She killed the flashlight instantly, plunging the root cellar into total darkness. She pressed her back against the stone wall, barely breathing, clutching the metal box against her chest as if it could protect her. Footsteps echoed above again, slow, deliberate. Someone was inside the house, and they knew exactly where to go. Dust rained lightly from the ceiling as floorboards creaked under the intruder's weight. Whoever it was, they were searching. And Angela had no doubt they were looking for her, or worse, what she had found. She slid toward the shadows, her breath shallow. She had to think fast. Her phone was upstairs. The only exit was the narrow stairwell she had come through, and if he blocked it, she was trapped. More footsteps. This time closer. Then she heard the shelf scrape above. The entrance was being uncovered. Angela's instincts kicked in. She placed the box behind the bricks, hiding it again. Just as she moved toward the far wall, her hand brushed cold iron. A rusted pipe. And behind it, air. A draft. She felt along the surface. Another exit? Desperate, she shoved against the stones. Nothing. She turned back, too late. The beam of a flashlight hit her face. "There you are," the man said. It was not Preston. It was someone older, bulkier, wearing a utility vest, no badge, no name, just menace in his eyes. Angela had never seen him before. "Who are you?" she whispered, backing away. "I clean up problems," he said, stepping forward. "And right now? You're a big one." She scanned the room. No weapons. No escape. But then her eyes fell on the pipe. She remembered something. The water line still fed into the basement, but it had been corroded for years. And corroded meant fragile. As he stepped closer, Angela grabbed the pipe and yanked. It snapped. A burst of freezing water exploded into the room, knocking the man backward. He slipped, fell, cursed. Angela used the moment. She ran up the stairs 2 at a time, screaming for her boys. "Lucas! Theo! Out the back, now!" They came running, eyes wide. No questions. No hesitation. They had seen fear on her face before, but never like this. They sprinted through the kitchen, out the back door, into the woods behind the house. Angela turned to make sure they were safe, only to see another man stepping out of a black SUV parked in the driveway. Slick suit, clean shoes, and a face she recognized. Preston Whitmore. He saw her, smiled. "You should have stayed out of this, Angela," he said calmly. "This house is not your story to tell." But she did not run. She stood her ground, wet, shaking, but unbroken. "You made one mistake, Preston," she said through gritted teeth. "You tried to bury the truth. And now?" The truth was running straight toward the light. Preston's smile faded. Angela's words hit him like a stone through glass, because deep down, he knew. She had everything. The journal, the locket, the bracelet, the baptism record, and now the hidden cellar documents. He may have had power, lawyers, connections, but she had the truth. And the truth, when told by the right person, was louder than any signature. He stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Let us be reasonable, Angela. This is just a misunderstanding. No need to involve the courts or the press." But Angela had already pulled out her phone from the mailbox, where she had hidden it earlier that day. The camera was on, and it was recording. "I think the world deserves to hear what kind of misunderstanding sends men into my home, while my children are inside." Preston's eyes narrowed. "You would really drag your family through this?" "You already did," she snapped. "But unlike you, I protect mine." Behind her, Lucas and Theo peeked from behind a tree, watching. Angela gave them a quick nod. It was okay now. She had control, but she had no idea how quickly that would change. Because Preston suddenly lunged, not at her, but at the phone. He smacked it out of her hand. It flew across the gravel, screen cracking on impact. Angela staggered, but did not fall. Preston pointed a finger at her, voice venomous now. "You have no idea what you are doing. This land, this house, there is more at stake than some dusty story. Do you know who built this town? Who paid to keep those records sealed?" She stared at him. "You?" "No," he said, lowering his voice. "People you do not want to cross. People who made sure Eleanor's child would never come back asking questions." Angela stepped closer, her voice steady. "But I did." Preston looked past her. Behind the trees, flashing lights approached. Red and blue. Angela's neighbor, an ex-sheriff, must have called them when he saw her running out with the kids. Preston backed away, his calm starting to crack. "You think the cops will help you? They are part of this mess too." "Then I will take it higher," she said. "This story, it's not just mine anymore." And as the police pulled up and stepped out, Angela did not look away. She raised her cracked phone, still blinking with life, and pressed play on the recording she had saved earlier. The moment she found the will. The moment she connected the bloodline. The moment Eleanor's voice returned to life. This house was never lost. It was stolen, Angela said. And now, it is going to be returned. The officers looked at Preston, then at Angela, then at the name on the legal document she handed over, Angela Carver, granddaughter of Samuel Whitmore. Silence. Then one officer nodded. We're going to need you to come with us, sir. Preston's eyes widened. You cannot be serious. But they were. Angela stood tall as he was handcuffed and walked to the cruiser. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply watched the door close behind him and breathed. For the first time in years, she exhaled without pain. Her children ran to her, hugging her tight. Is it over? Theo asked. Angela looked down at them and shook her head gently. No, sweetheart. It is just beginning. Because this was no longer just her story. It was Eleanor's. It was Samuel's. It was theirs. And it was finally going to be heard. In the weeks that followed, Angela became someone she never imagined she could be, a voice. Not just for her family, but for every person whose history had been silenced, rewritten, or sold off by those in power. The story of the Whitmore house spread faster than she expected. A local journalist caught wind of it, then a national outlet picked it up. Headlines read, Single mother uncovers century-old cover-up hidden beneath her home. Stolen legacy returned after hidden journal sparks investigation. Angela watched it all unfold with quiet strength. But this was never about fame, it was about justice. About Eleanor's pain being acknowledged. About giving Samuel, the child erased from records, his name back. And about protecting her children's right to know where they came from. The legal battle was messy, as expected. Preston's claim crumbled under the weight of Angela's evidence. The will. The baptism record. The documents from the root cellar. Even Eleanor's old bank ledgers helped trace property taxes she had paid long after her husband's death, proving continued ownership. And when the judge looked over the final documents, he paused, then looked up at her. This home was never legally lost, he said. It was hidden. And now, it is restored. Angela closed her eyes. She had won. Not just the house, but the story. The truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. She walked past them, hand in hand with her sons. They asked her to speak. She turned, looked at the cameras, and said, This is not just about a house. This is about knowing who you are. About fighting for the people who came before you, even if you never met them. Because sometimes, the past is not behind you. It is buried beneath your feet, waiting to be brought home. Back at the house, everything felt different. The walls no longer whispered pain. They carried pride. The attic had been cleaned, restored, and turned into a reading room where Lucas loved to sit by the window. Theo turned the root cellar into a hideaway fort, complete with flashlights and painted walls. And Angela? She started writing. Not just about Eleanor, but about all the forgotten women history tried to erase. Stories of strength, of silence broken, of legacies returned. Her first book was titled, The House That Remembered Me. It became a bestseller, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Because every crack in those old floorboards had something to say. And Angela had finally learned how to listen. The Indie subscribe for more real stories that remind us, the truth always finds a way.